Hi guys! I know it's been quite a while. I've been quite busy with life stuff and actually working on the comic more consistently, which has been really nice. There's a little preview over here if you want to sort of get a glimpse at some of that. I don't always know how consistent my YouTube content specifically is going to be, but just know that I do care about it. And sometimes when I have something really weighing on me, I just have to make a video sometimes. And yeah, I'm still slowly working on the research for that one character analysis video I'm gonna do. And other than that, I might actually like to make a video about my own content again. For someone who makes their own stories and talks about content on YouTube, it's maybe kind of surprising how little I actually talk about my own content, but I love talking about it, so I should really do that sometime. I was thinking maybe since it's almost the new year, I could make a video about just covering everything that's happened in the comic in the past year, like in chapter 4. That might be fun. I think by the time I make that, a lot more will have happened in chapter 4, so yeah, maybe I'll do that, but we'll see. I'm also moving out from my parents and family for the first time in my life, so yeah, it's a really different season of my life and I'm excited for it, but it may affect my content somewhat for a bit. Now what I actually really wanted to talk about today was the Sonic the Hedgehog movie, but specifically the one from back in 2020. Some leaks came out about the plot for the sequel recently, and I was so excited. I couldn't believe how excited I was. I don't know, I don't usually get that excited, but yeah, I was freaking out and telling so many people, like my siblings. And I was talking to a few people on the Comic Fury forums about it, and some of what they said kind of made me think a little bit more about why I really like the original movie. And on top of that, I actually watched the movie again last night. It was a suggestion from someone in my family, and I was surprised, and almost everyone watched it. We had fun. Usually it's just me and the younger kids who want to watch that one, so that was pretty cool. But anyways, that's more than enough bunny trailing, so back to the topic. I'm going to be talking a bit about some things some people have said to me about the movie, and a few reasons why I think that the movie is actually quite decent, if not quite good. So, here we go. So one of the things that was said to me was, it was from someone who had not seen the movie, but they had no interest in seeing it because it looked too much like the Garfield movie or the older ones with Bill Murray and the Smurfs movies and Alvin and the Chipmunks, cartoon character ends up in New York City with some guy and hijinks ensue, right? And that's not entirely wrong because the aesthetic is there. I could see why it would remind you of that. And even some of the premise is a bit like that as well, but if there are any movies that I do heavily criticize and rag on, it's got to be some of those. Geez, I really hate them in all honesty, those movies Alvin, Garfield, especially Smurfs, ugh. So that sort of begs the question, why don't I hate this movie if it's just like that? And in my opinion, that's because it isn't. And some other people have said this too, but maybe I want to touch upon some other things specifically that haven't been talked about as much, maybe. I think one of the first things that comes to my mind when I think of those lesser movies like Garfield or Alvin and the Chipmunks is they feel really artificial and unfunny, like they're trying to be funny or they're trying to be cute. And I don't think anyone could accuse Sonic of being not cute, especially this movie version. But it all feels a lot more natural, down to earth, and heartfelt to me. I think it was made by people who actually enjoyed what they were doing. Another difference in the aesthetic is that there is more violence. Not a lot, but there's definitely some cool action scenes that I really enjoyed. I wish there was more, but there's going to be more in the second movie, so don't worry. But even the nature of the humor and the dialogue feels different. At least a lot of it does. A lot of the jokes are going to go right over kids' heads. And sometimes this sort of thing can really annoy me because it feels like it's trying too hard to be mature and grown up and just comes across as immature. But for the most part, I think Sonic, it just feels like it's not just pandering to kids or to immature adults. Mainly, I don't think it ever really tries too hard to be one thing or another. It's just happy being what it is. Another thing I've heard people criticize this movie on, and this is something I understand a little bit more in some ways, There's this scene where Sonic and Tom have an argument. It's mostly Sonic, and it seems to come straight out of the blue. No pun intended. That was actually an accident, sorry. But it's right after Tom shares with Sonic that his life goal basically is to move to San Francisco and to actually be able to save human lives, like save people who are in real trouble. He feels like that would be very meaningful for him as a police officer. And that seems totally fair, right? But Sonic proceeds to get really angry and totally guilt trips Tom for leaving his hometown, like as if he's somehow abandoning all these people. And the odd person I've heard say that, yeah, this version of Sonic is a jerk because of that scene, or they just find him annoying because he's really hyperactive, a little bit neurotic, like he's so overwhelming, right? And I too found that scene to be quite jarring, like I was very surprised by Sonic's initial reaction. At first I felt like that. But the next line after the initial reaction, the next line that Sonic yells at him really provides more context, I think, and it hurts. He said something like, "I was forced from my home. Your town is perfect. There are 0 bad guys trying to kill you and people who love you, and you're going to just throw all that away." I don't think I'm getting any awards for my Sonic impressions anytime soon. But that line makes us remember what Sonic went through at the beginning of the movie. Even though it was short, it did do its job in communicating what happened. Sonic was forced from his home. His home was beautiful, and he watched his mother figure get apparently shot. Well, yeah, she was shot, but I don't know if she's actually dead or not. But ever since Sonic lost that home and that freedom, he's just been hiding and trying to find a place that's like even remotely safe. Like, that's good enough for him. Not really, but he thinks it is. This is something, of course, Tom wouldn't really be able to understand since he's not, some powerful, dangerous creature like Sonic. But Sonic's traumatic background has really forced him to super appreciate, like, these smaller things that a lot of us will probably take for granted and that he just craves more than anything. And I think at the end of the movie, even if Tom doesn't completely understand Sonic, he does come to appreciate those things in life a lot more because of him. And while we're on the topic of Sonic's apparent annoyingness and his personality, which some people liked and some people didn't, when you don't think about it, I think Sonic would probably be a bit of an annoying character. Like, super hyperactive, maybe even a little bratty. Like, mainly, he just hardly ever stops talking, right? But I think if you take all the events of the movie and all the details about Sonic's character into proper context, they actually make a lot of sense, and I think it's quite realistic. Sonic's been completely isolated, like cut off from basic human connection since he was little. Watching people when you're hiding from them is not the same thing as connecting with them at all. Like, in fact, it's maybe even more miserable than being all alone. I don't know. But people need human connection to survive, like, to keep their sanity, actually. So I think it's actually quite miraculous that Sonic isn't crazy, or that he's not even more of a jerk. Like, of course he's gonna be neurotic. He's gonna be super anxious and talkative. He's so eager to make those connections that he's been dreaming about, yearning for years, and at the same time he's terrified of losing that. But now I'd like to talk a bit about my own personal experience with this movie. I remember anticipating it a lot when I was in a pretty dark place in my late teens, I think. And I just didn't have a lot to look forward to at that time, or so I thought. But I remember frequently looking up to see if there were any news about the movie. Like, this was back as far as like 2016 when this had been announced, and yeah, I was so for it. I'd never played the games really, but I'd always loved the aesthetic, and I had definitely read some of the Archie comics, which I quite loved. Like, I thought the characters were surprisingly nuanced. Even when we got that first trailer with the super ugly design, I was so excited. I wasn't even mad about the design. I didn't love it, of course not, but I was just so excited that it was finally happening, like I've been waiting for so long. And watching it in the theater, it was awesome. It was such a great experience. I loved it so much. My family, I think a lot of them were like, it was okay, or like, it was you know, it was fine. I don't know why you love it so much. And after a while, some of that started to get to me. Like, I wondered, maybe I was looking at it through like some particular lens. Like, maybe it isn't as great as I felt like it was. I ended up watching it, like, I think it was the third time I watched it, and it was just with a bunch of kids. I watched it and we laughed so hard, and we were like quoting the characters, and we were having so much fun watching it. And I was like, I'm sorry, I love this movie. It's just so simple and fun and easy to watch, with a lot of little things in there that you can really enjoy. I think one of the main things it did for me, however, was sort of give Sonic more of a face to me. Like, I think when it comes to what I was familiar with in the Sonic franchise, like, I liked Sonic, he was really iconic and cool, but I always loved all the other characters more. Like, I could relate to them a lot more than Sonic. So this movie really made Sonic feel human to me for the first time. I could deeply connect with him. I'm not even exaggerating. I can strongly relate to feeling isolated, like you're always looking at the world but not a part of it. I think because of my own past experiences that are nowhere near the level of Sonic's, but because of them, a lot of people would look at me the way some of the people in the Sonic movie look at Sonic, like, "Oosh, he's so weird," or "he's so overwhelming, like, what's wrong with him?" I still can relate to that so much. Like, it's still a thing. It's still how I feel in some ways. It's kind of rare for a main character in something mainstream to be so much like, oh my gosh, that's me. That's awkward, annoying me. And it almost makes me want to cry, but it mostly makes me happy. Like, it makes me really appreciate and care about this movie a lot more. And so I guess someone could make the point that I would not care about this movie as much as I do if not for all those personal things. So it's for personal reasons why I care. And that's fair. That's totally fair. But I also think this movie is really solid from a filmmaking perspective. It's at least decent. Like, it makes sense to me. There's this really gorgeous, really visually gorgeous scene at the climax where Sonic and Robotnik have a face-off. And I think it's a pretty good example. Like, it's just a small example, but I thought it was significant myself. An example of decent writing, like setting things up so that they make sense. There's motivation, there's setup, there's payoff. Now, first of all, I remember in the trailer for the movie, like the final trailer or something, we heard Sonic say this line. He said something like, "This is my power, and I'm using it to protect my friends." And I remember I didn't like that line. I thought it was incredibly cheesy and typical, not very interesting. But that's not quite what he says in the actual movie. What he does say is, "This is my power, and I'm not using it to run away anymore. I'm using it to protect my friends." Now, aside from the fact that this is a really badass and enjoyable scene, I also think that that line really makes sense in the context. At first I thought Sonic would just say that line because it's cool and heroic, and like, that's what you're supposed to say in the climax. But Sonic had always been told by a well-meaning Longclaw that he had to hide. He had to use his powers to hide and to protect himself. She told him to never stop running. And naturally, he would listen to her because he loves her and looks up to her. But at the end of the day, I think Sonic realizes that these powers do not belong to Longclaw. They don't belong to Eggman, no matter what he says. They don't belong to anyone except for him, and he finally decides to make his own choice. And he chooses to use his powers to protect others instead of himself. He's not going to live in fear anymore, because that's just no way to live. It's amazing how that little change to one line makes something feel not cheesy anymore, but actually inspiring. At least to me, but I don't know. Do you think I'm thinking too deeply about all this? As always, feel free to let me know in the comments below. And thank you so much for listening. I think I rambled a lot in this one, so double thanks. Anyways, you have a great week, everybody. Keep going fast. Keep moving forward. Just like Sonic. Okay, bye.